The testimony, again, graphic. Ventura's husband, Alex Fine, at one point walking out of court as his wife was peppered with questions about allegedly being raped. Also today, Dawn Richard spotted entering court, the former member of Diddy's girl group, Danity Kane, who prosecutors also called to the stand.
This week has been extremely challenging, but also remarkably empowering and healing for me. I hope that my testimony has given strength and a voice to other survivors and can help others who have suffered to speak up and also heal from abuse and fear. For me, the more I heal, the more I can remember. And the more I can remember, the more I will never forget.
Is there anything that you may want to confess tonight before you go in?
I keep everything right here.
No, because it wasn't simply a secret that Cassie was concealing there. A cry went unheard. A full decade of domination, humiliation, freak-offs, violence, and dread. She was allegedly beaten by Diddy in the Met Gala restroom that same evening. Even worse, it is said that other celebrities ignored it after seeing it. Cassie is now speaking the truth after testifying during Diddy's criminal trial while 9 months pregnant, and it's much worse than anybody could have ever imagined. We're discussing S parties with strangers, F feuds, and F stirring. She likened it to everything about Ike Turner and claimed she wanted to walk into traffic since it was such a strong emotional breakdown and kind of blackmail. Eat the cake anime style, Ike Turner, like you all. Let's discuss Cassie's survival and the implications for Diddy's sentencing now that the video has been released and the courtroom doors have been thrown open. Diddy's attorneys have been posing these queries in an effort to prevent him from rotting in jail. Why didn't Cassie speak out sooner if her life with Diddy was so awful? However, it turns out that the solution is really simple.
According to Cassie, she was embarrassed by it. She even talked about, what would I tell my mom if something like this got out?
A terrible dread of what would happen if she did anything to offend Diddy. Nothing positive comes out of freak-offs, she said in a 2017 text exchange that was leaked. Then, in reference to the abuse she claims to have experienced, she adds, "You treat me like you're Ike Turner." Cassie didn't simply happen to name drop like Ike Turner. She turned it into a weapon. You already know the tragedy of Ike and Tina, so those 8 words carried generations of grief. Bruises were never the only thing involved. It was about possessing someone and having control over their food, clothing, singing, and emotions. It had to do with such intense terror that you stayed, lied, smiled, and even loved your abuser. Cassie said, that's precisely what happened to her. When it all began, she was still a teenager. A new vocalist on the rise, yes, it was almost 40, and he locked her down rather than empowering her. You signed with Bad Boy Records when? 2006. The agreement was for 10 albums. After the end of 2006, did you release any? No. Yes, you did hear her. He delivered her 1 record while promising her 10. Rather, she endured 10 years of unimaginable mistreatment. Cassie informed the judge that she didn't just have a bad day. Year after year, she was gradually deprived of her agency after being prepared for it and made to feel unique. Cassie was also supposed to be quiet in private and act nice in public, much like Tina Turner. However, that quiet has now broken. She spoke of being physically abused, doted on, and recorded without her permission, as well as being coerced into freak-offs with male escorts. Daniel Phillip, a male escort, took the stand a few days before, and his tales were outrageous. He said that in order to get blackmail, Diddy forced him to utilize Cassie's lips as she choked and recorded the whole incident. The same man claimed to have seen Cassie and Diddy twice. Then, he grabbed her by the hair and pulled her into the bedroom. He dragged her into the bedroom as she was screaming, and from what I could hear, he slapped her. Cassie is now verifying the horror for herself, which makes me shudder. "Why were you choking?" she asked the prosecution yesterday. "My mouth is overflowing with S. You're C on you, who else?" "Sean, did you want to get said by Sean?" "I did not want to be said by anybody." How often did it occur? Frequently enough, so take a moment to think about it. "I was supposed to stress out when I got my period," she said. "Were you inclined to do that?" "No."
Diddy's ex, Cassie Ventura, who is 9 months pregnant, was on the stand for the 2nd day in a row. The jury was shown photos of past injuries. She also testified the freak-offs left her with sores, frequent UTIs, and stomach problems.
And repeated UTIs as a result of the freak-offs. This was a ritualistic, disgusting, and dehumanizing experience, not simply a few crazy nights or a child. She said that refusing would put her safety at jeopardy. Why would you speak softly to him? I did not want for him to be upset. She said that in order to prevent blackmail, she had to remove footage from her own phone. Please remove the videos from your phone, I wrote. Your gadgets are in the hands of too many individuals. No, iCloud is fine and starting to kick in, he answered. He reportedly raped her on the floor of her living room during a closing chat after she eventually left him. Imagine Cassie's feelings when she told Diddy she was 9 months pregnant and that millions of people would be listening to her testimony throughout this trial. Additionally, Cassie Ventura has been mostly stoic as she completes her testimony.
Cassie Ventura completing her testimony. She's been pretty stoic, but this afternoon she broke down in tears.
She did, Eva, and she had kept her composure for most of her 4 days on the witness stand under really uncomfortable cross-examination and testimony generally, the most intimate, graphic, demeaning things that you could imagine. She spoke about in open court in front of everybody, and she broke down today when she was asked by prosecutor Emily Johnson on redirect examination whether Sean Combs had her during freak-offs, those marathon-fueled sessions with male dudes.
Her tears brought others to tears, but the quote that most people found most moving was the one that made this more than just a financial issue. Since I would have agency and autonomy and wouldn't have to put in as much effort to regain those things, I would return the money. She was referring to the $20 million, 0 cents, she received from Diddy as a settlement of her case. She would sacrifice everything for her freedom. Because it's more than simply heartache. That lady is screaming for her freedom. Her Ike Turner text was played in court for just that reason. Due to freedom? Tina Turner also battled for the very thing. I felt obligated to stay there and I was afraid, she once stated. After he beat me up, I was sitting there all bruised and ripped, and I didn't want to harm him. Suddenly, I felt sorry for him. I could have been brainwashed. Additionally, Cassie admitted to the court that she often held herself responsible for the events. She accepted the humiliation, covered herself in bruises, smiled when she tried to blend in, and lived 2 lives. One that the public loved, and one that the mirror hardly recognized. I had the impression that males were excessively objectifying me. When Cassie spoke about being, her own husband had to leap because she was remembering such deep anguish.
Prosecutors claiming the defense dragging it out, trying to force a mistrial. The testimony, again, graphic. Ventura's husband, Alex Fine, at one point walking out of court as his wife was peppered with questions about allegedly being. Also today, Don Richard spotted entering court, the former member of Diddy's girl group, Diddy Kane, who prosecutors also called to the stand.
Ventura's husband, Alex Fine, was seen leaving the courtroom at one time. Don Richard, a former member of Diddy's girl group, Diddy Kane, was also seen entering court today. Prosecutors also invited Richard to testify. Because she wanted to regain her agency, she showed up 9 months pregnant, even though she didn't have to testify because she had already received a $20 million 0 cents settlement. Little did she know that the real storm was about to happen, though, because just as her courtroom testimony was beginning to fade from the trending page, the 2018 Met Gala interview was released, and suddenly it wasn't just Cassidy testifying, but real-life footage, her face, and the moment everyone missed was now playing back in 4K clarity, and everything was about to blast its lid off. The Met Gala is considered to be the most exclusive night in fashion, but in 2018, something else appeared behind the scenes that no one was willing to discuss. Before you enter tonight, is there anything you would want to confess? Everything I own is kept right here. People at the time thought Cassie was merely a cute, maybe enigmatic character. Now, however, it seems like a code, a message, a lady blinking in Morse in the hopes that someone, anybody, would see through her custom-made fancy gown and assist her. Because according to Cassie, she was being abused, humiliated, and controlled daily behind that flashbulb and fashion. According to a number of sources and industry rumors, Diddy reportedly assaulted Cassie in a Met Gala restroom that evening while other celebrities were there, and nothing was done about it. The problem with people like Diddy is that they don't just harm you behind your back. People who are too afraid to speak out are present in the rooms where they do it. Let's return to what Cassie said a few days earlier when under oath. She portrayed a society in which she was unable to refuse requests, and her body, schedule, and even her health were all controlled for the sole goal of freaking out. The freak-offs turned into a career. There was no other option than to complete them and then attempt to recuperate. She said that the fallout left her with sores and recurrent UTIs that were no longer responsive to medication. Did the UTIs hurt? Indeed, extremely. Antibacterials were no longer effective. What was the experience like during freak-offs? Blazing. I wouldn't suggest it. She wasn't created only to take part. They reportedly monitored her, videotaped her, and threatened to blackmail her if she ever disobeyed. He once threatened to release the freak-off tapes when I was seeing someone else. My mother would be my boss. It's filthy and awful. That should never be done to anybody. What was the effect, according to Sean? Disgrace. As the pieces began to fit together, people's reaction to seeing the Gala clip was one of terror rather than just curiosity. The rigid body language, the constrained words, and the way Diddy watched and laughed behind her in that video. There was also the period after the carpet, which was not seen on the live feed. Cassie was beaten in a private toilet that night, and she wasn't the only victim, according to rumors heightened by the trial evidence and insider information. It was said that other famous people were nearby, maybe even in the room. And no one spoke, regardless of whether they saw her emerge trembling or heard the thuds or yells. Because Diddy wasn't on trial in 2018, he remained untouchable. He was brotherly love. Puff Diddy is a business magnate who has the power to make or ruin a career with a single phone call. Cassie was simply another artist who was fortunate enough to date the boss. That's how people perceived it anyhow. She was living in hell, however, nevertheless. At the Met Gala, this was the occasion, and it was a very accurate representation of the 10 years Cassie claims to have lived through. An active partner who was welcomed by everyone because he wrote those checks, a gorgeous mask that covered up trauma and bruises beneath couture, and a room full of influential people who knew but still insisted it was none of my concern. Cassie continued to appear, but on the inside she was dying. I once attempted to walk out in traffic because I couldn't bear the discomfort any longer. She said in court that Diddy would hurl her against walls, beat her face, drag her over hotel floors, and once, after dangling her from a balcony, toss her across a patio of furniture. And she wasn't the only one who said that. The world saw evidence. This 2016 hotel security footage was released. Allegedly depicts Combs in a corridor with Cassie Ventura, his then-girlfriend. According to Ventura's now-settled complaint, Combs assaulted her when she was attempting